I was going to tease your appearance, and I said, could you sue someone if they gave you the coronavirus? And these guys are on the other side of the glass and Aaron, no, there's no way you can die. You can't do it, blah, blah, blah. Are there any legal ramifications for something like that, or is that just completely not realistic?
So I'm messing with you. It's actually not a dumb question at all because enough people are asking it that no one has that answer. So there is basically a very long history of cases in our country dealing with the spread of viruses, the spread of diseases. So you'll most likely see that when it comes to the spread of an HIV or an STD or something like that. There are less cases when it comes to the spread of a disease, but it's something like a coronavirus, because obviously we've never seen it before. But the case law is really the same. So it requires someone to act carelessly or maybe recklessly while they either know they have the disease or they think they might have it. But at the end of the day, in order to win on a type of lawsuit like this, you need to show that someone's actions, be it careless or reckless, were the proximate cause of you actually, getting coronavirus. So, the people are asking the question in the context of a Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz. Did he potentially give Donovan Mitchell coronavirus? But the answer is this: we don't know how Donovan Mitchell got it. We just know that he tested for it after Rudy Gobert tested for it. But that doesn't really tell us how exactly he got it. So, to answer your question, could we see a lawsuit? Yes. I mean, you see crazy lawsuits all the time, but do you see someone winning on this? Not likely.
Well, and that was kind of my question relative to not just all of these sports canceling, but specifically the NCAA tournament. And, for you, if you don't know, a lot of my background's in college sports, but the number one issue that I've heard is that the NCAA was putting themselves in legal harm by letting these kids take the court. I mean, that has to be accurate, right? You're flying around the country, exposing yourself to thousands of people that you wouldn't be otherwise. Is that the primary reason why most of these sports entities shut down shop, not only to protect their athletes, but because there was real legal liability?
There's probably twofold. I mean, from the legal end, right, as the NBA, they're playing host in all these different arenas, be it Ohio, be it, Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament for all those years. They're playing host to that. So if they, have fans enter an arena where this is a potential risk, it's possible that they could get hit with what we call, it's a negligence case. It's basically as the host of the venue, do they know that fans are coming? Are they putting them in harm's way in a way that maybe fans wouldn't know that they're exposed to this risk? So that's part of it, right? And the other part is this Rudy Gobert issue, right? All these players could potentially, have their, reputation harmed in some way or some fashion if they got this diagnosis. And I was listening to you guys, a couple minutes ago. We keep hearing all these different, alerts, right? Christian Wood of the Detroit Pistons, he has coronavirus. There's a Yankees minor leaguer. I don't know how much news value that gives us, but for those guys' reputations moving forward, we're always going to remember, right, that Rudy Gobert got it, that Donovan Mitchell got it. So I don't know how much it really helps those athletes, but probably on a practical level, guys, the NBA draft is scheduled for June 25th, 2020. We have not heard that is going to be postponed or moved in any way, shape, or form. So as much as, May Mayhem sounds exciting, or May Madness, you want to call it that, these players have most of these, the top level guys, have an NBA draft to prepare for. So there's also a scenario, right, if you had a late May Madness, that these guys, the top guys, wouldn't be playing in it because they want to get ready for this draft. But, the NBA season is very much in flux. So I think with all these different factors, the NCAA thought it's safe just to, cancel it and not just push it back indefinitely like we've seen in other sports.
National sports law analyst Dan Lust joining us. You're not going to get me to go down the road again, but I would say this. Even though you are reporting a Yankees player being tested positive and it's not helpful to him, that isn't the job of news to be helpful to the player, right? I mean, yeah, it stinks for the player, but it's not the news department's job to take care of the player. The news department's job is to report news. Fair enough?
Totally understood. I think, and I have no problem personally with something like that being reported. The issue more so that I have from the legal perspective is when it's being reported that, Rudy Gobert is causing this infection in the NBA, which we don't know.
Sure.
Right? We just know that Rudy Gobert was the first to test positive. So, not so long ago, about a month ago, we had this, Mason Rudolph, Myles Garrett thing with defamation, right? Did Myles Garrett make the story up, or did Mason Rudolph actually say it? So it's one thing to say Rudy Gobert has coronavirus, Donovan Mitchell has it, but where you're seeing it online and reported pretty consistently is that Rudy Gobert gave it to Donovan Mitchell, but there's no real proof of that. And just on an evidentiary level, March 5th is when Donovan Mitchell is at this Boston casino, And this is a week before his diagnosis, and the casino felt it important enough to announce to all of their patrons that were there that night that a guest, presumably Donovan Mitchell, contracted it. So there's a scenario in here where Mitchell got it the week before and then just happened to have been tested after Gobert. So, just some misinformation is important on the legal level,
Sure.
So there's no defamation or anything like that.
Dan Lust again joining us here on Fox Sports Radio. I just had to throw that in. I had a different question because we had Scott Drew on, the head coach at Baylor, and we had talked to him about possible additional eligibility for these athletes in these winter sports. Is there any legal possibility if, say, the NCAA says, all right, guys, girls, you weren't able to participate in your championship. Sorry, you're not going to come back. Would they have any legal ground to try to fight that if the NCAA made that decision?
So they would, and I think what's new to some, the NCAA has actually said for spring athletes, players that are playing baseball or any other type of spring sport, that they're going to get additional eligibility. They're going to hammer out the details of that, but they've already announced it, that it looks like they're going to get it. When it comes to the winter sport athletes, I mean, some of their seasons are pretty much done, right? There's been a couple conference tournaments that have been played. Teams are not going to get invited. They weren't been invited to the NIT, and their season was over. So for these college basketball players, a lot of them have played, between 90 to 100% of their season. So from a legal perspective, right, you can file a petition for additional eligibility, right? We see that all the time in college football for injury exceptions, injury redshirt years. But the NCAA at the end of the day is a private organization. They can really do whatever they want. They could give you the eligibility or they could not. It's the same thing we're seeing with fair pay to play. They could change their whole bylaws and allow players to get paid. They just don't want to do it. The question is when there becomes some type of state or federal law that mandates it. But I doubt on any state or federal level that they're going to force these college basketball players who have 90% of their season to play to get an additional year, because as we're seeing guys on the state and federal level, they have much bigger things on their hands at this point in time.
So Major League Baseball, obviously you just referenced it. We talked about it last segment, the first case in professional baseball, Yankees minor leaguer. But what's interesting about the major leagues is that it seems as though the sport itself allowed the players to make the decision kind of team by team. Do you want to stay at the facilities? Do you want to go back to your hometown? Does either Major League Baseball, the New York Yankees, etc., God forbid something happens with this kid that got it, are they under any legal kind of liability with that?
So, it's kind of a gray area. There's something, and it's important to be said here, called the assumption of the risk.
Sure.
So once someone knows about a risk, you can possibly assume it, right? When we go to baseball games, we know that we could get hit with a foul ball. It's very possible. It's the same thing about hockey. There was a case the other day with I think it was the Washington Capitals, where a puck flew through the little hole, the photographer hole cut out, and someone got hit in the face. We know those are risks. And if in light of you knowing about a risk, potential infection with coronavirus, walking into a stadium, right? UFC event went on, WrestleMania looks like it's going on. If you then go into an arena knowing that there's a potential risk of infection, that's very different. So that's one of the exceptions to a negligence case. If you know about the risk, right? If you know that Rudy Gobert has coronavirus and you go into the locker room and you shake hands with with coronavirus, with Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell, you're assuming that risk. So when they put the decision in the Yankees' hands, the Yankees all know what's possible here, right? It's not like we were on March 11th when it was the Jazz Thunder game when no one really knew what was going on. So do the Yankees put themselves at some type of legal liability? Maybe a little bit, but players are adults; they're allowed to make this decision on their own. And I'm sure the Yankees attorneys were consulted in this, and this decision wasn't taken lightly. But for the safety of the players and to make sure that everyone was on the same page, I think it was probably a smart call for everyone to kind of test their own risk tolerance.
On a day where a CBA is agreed, we have a lawyer on it. We can't even ask any questions because we're out of time. It gives us another reason to have Dan Lust back here on Fox Sports Radio, national sports law analyst. Dan, we appreciate the time. We'll direct everybody to your Twitter page, at Sports Law Trust or Lust, and they can end up tweeting you questions as well. Right? Is that fair enough?
Sounds
Is that good?
It's totally fair, and it's a hard name to forget. Sports Law Lust, and happy to come on anytime, guys.
I got the Lust, and I wanted to say they could tweet you and got it mixed up, but yes, at Sports Law Lust.
You can also trust me, too. That's fine.
And we're going to have you back on. Thanks, Dan. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he's Aaron Torres. I'm Dan Beyer. This is Fox Sports Sunday. Yeah, just a lot to get to, but make some really good points of what's legal and what's not, and entering arenas and how you're accepting that responsibility.
Well,
Yeah.
and he hit one thing that's really important. I know we got to get to Gascon, but Arnie Spanier and I talked about this a lot last night, is this assumption that Donovan Mitchell definitively got this illness from Rudy Gobert. It's preposterous. Rudy Gobert was irresponsible, but let's stop saying definitively that he is the reason that Donovan Mitchell has this illness.
He's Aaron Torres. I'm Dan Beyer. This is Fox Sports Sunday. Coming up next.